Some wonders leave ruins. This one left a question. The hanging gardens of Babylon, terraces of green above the desert, water climbing uphill. But we can't point to them on a map. No foundation, no Babylonian inscription, nothing that says here. Most of the story comes from outsiders, writing about a miracle they may never have seen. So what if the gardens weren't in Babylon at all? What if they were in Nineveh, built by another king, with canals and aqueducts as his real weapon? Then the gardens aren't just a lost paradise, they're propaganda made of living green, power you can hear flowing. And the real mystery is simple. Where was it, and who rewrote the name?
To understand how a wonder can lose its address, you have to see how the story was built. Most of the famous descriptions of the gardens don't come from Babylonian records. They come from Greek and Roman writers, people looking back, compiling, retelling. They describe a structure that sounds less like a park and more like a mountain made of architecture. Stones stacked on stones, vaults carrying deep soil, trees big enough to cast real shade. And always, the same impossible detail returns. Water, lifted upward continuously against gravity. Not a fountain, not a decorative trick, a full irrigation system capable of feeding a forest in the sky. That's why the Hanging Gardens became more than a wonder. They became a symbol of ancient technology that feels almost modern, a myth that survives because it sounds both absurd and strangely practical. But the deeper you go into these accounts, the more the texture changes. The writers don't agree on every detail. Some sound like they're describing something they saw. Others sound like they're describing something they heard described, then polished into literature. And that matters, because when a story is retold across borders, it doesn't just travel, it transforms. Names simplify, places merge. Great cities attract credit like magnets. So the gardens begin to feel less like a single photograph and more like a composite image assembled from fragments of memory and reputation. Which brings us to the uncomfortable part. If Babylon really held a world-famous state-scale wonder, why does Babylon itself stay so quiet about it?
Babylon was not shy. Kings there carved achievements into stone, stamped their names into bricks, turned buildings into messages. If you wanted to be remembered, you didn't rely on strangers to do it for you. And yet, no surviving Babylonian inscription clearly says, "I built the Hanging Gardens." Archaeologists have dug through the ruins of Babylon for generations. They've uncovered palaces, walls, courtyards, streets, structures with unmistakable signatures of royal power. But no single undisputed foundation has stepped forward as the gardens. No terrace system that screams it once carried a mountain of trees. No hydraulic heart of a machine built to lift water on an industrial scale. Now, to be fair, gardens are fragile in the archaeological record. Wood rots, soil collapses, water channels get repurposed. A temple can fall and leave stones. A garden can fall and leave an absence. And Babylon suffered heavily. War, rebuilding, looting, erosion, centuries of reuse. It's absolutely possible that the physical remains were dismantled or buried beyond recognition. But even if the structure vanished, there's still the silence problem. Because Babylon left records about many things. So why not the most famous wonder on Earth? That gap doesn't prove the gardens were fake. It does something more dangerous. It makes room for another location. And if you're willing to let the address change, the story suddenly becomes clearer in a new setting. Because there is a place where royal gardens and massive water engineering show up loudly, repeatedly, proudly. Nineveh. Nineveh was a different kind of capital. Where Babylon's myth is often about splendor, Nineveh's legacy is about systems, control, scale, logistics, an empire that treated geography like something you could redesign. And that's why one theory refuses to go away. What if the Hanging Gardens of Babylon were actually in Nineveh? Not built by the king we usually imagine, but by an Assyrian king who understood that water is power. Because in a dry landscape, the ability to deliver water is not comfort, it's dominance. It means you can feed a city, you can grow orchards, you can turn a hill green while your enemies stare at dust. And here's the key. The Assyrian world gives us something Babylon doesn't clearly give us in this specific story. Evidence of enormous hydraulic ambition. Canals cut across terrain, aqueduct-like structures carrying water, engineering that looks like a statement, we can make nature obey. So picture the gardens again, but reframe them, not as a romantic gift, as a political machine. A living monument that never stops moving because it can't. Water has to climb every hour, every day, year after year. Workers maintaining channels in darkness, reservoirs feeding higher terraces, stone corridors damp with mist, a constant flow you could literally hear. Now imagine visiting such a place as a foreign emissary.
You walk into a capital of stone and heat, and suddenly you're standing under shade. You hear running water in a land where water is rare. You see trees rising above walls like a conquered mountain. That isn't just beauty, that is intimidation. That is propaganda made of living green. And if that's true, if the gardens belonged to a different empire, then history didn't merely forget a wonder, it reassigned it. The story migrated toward the name of Babylon because Babylon became the shorthand for ancient greatness. And once the shorthand becomes popular, it becomes permanent. So the question isn't only where was it, it's how does a civilization get erased from its own miracle?
So what are we left with? Two possibilities that are both unsettling. The first, the Hanging Gardens were real, a monumental terrace garden supported by serious engineering, but the location drifted over time and Babylon inherited the label. In that version, the gardens are not a myth, they're a misnamed truth. The second, the gardens were never one single place. They were a literary wonder, an idea built from multiple royal gardens, multiple waterworks, multiple stories, compressed into one perfect image that no one ever saw exactly as described. In that version, the wonder still matters because it reveals what ancient empires wanted the world to believe, that they could lift water, lift mountains, lift nature itself, and make it all look effortless. Either way, the Hanging Gardens force a final realization. History doesn't always disappear. Sometimes it simply changes names. And that might be the most haunting kind of loss. Not the loss of stones, but the loss of credit, of authorship, of origin. Because if you can't place a wonder, you can't fully know it. And if you can't know it, you can't be sure who it belonged to. So the Hanging Gardens remain what they have always been, a miracle balanced on uncertainty. Not because the past is empty, but because the past is messy and memory is political. Which brings us back to your original question. Some wonders leave ruins. This one left a question. Where was it, and who rewrote the name?